Devil's Stairs is a rock formation beside a highway in Ashe County, North Carolina. The rocks are among the oldest in North America, but the Devil's Stairs are man-made. They were formed when a work crew blasted the mountains to make way for a new railway line. The man who lit the fuse tripped as he was running away from the blast and was blown to bits. Ever since then, strange things have happened around the Devil's Stairs.
I remember the story from when I was growing up. My grandmother told me. We've lived here for 5 generations. The minister from our church was on his way home one Sunday night. It was fall, it was a cold night, and as he headed down the road, he came to the area known as the Devil's Stairs, and he saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. It was a man wearing a long black trench coat and a hat of sorts. Well, he stopped and offered the man a ride. So he got in the back seat, but was silent. After a few miles, the minister tried to ease the situation by making conversation. He wanted to know where the man was going and where he's from, but the passenger was silent.
It's kind of far off the beaten path to be out in these woods all alone, right?
Finally, the minister turned around and looked him right in the eye and saw, to his shock, these fiery, glowing eyes. He pulled over the car immediately because he wanted to get whoever or whatever it was out. And to his second shock, the back seat was empty. There was no one there.
Does the devil himself walk the hills of North Carolina? The spot known for almost a century as the Devil's Stairs has been the site of strange and frightening encounters, death, and bad luck.
Brian, Mayer, and I decided to go camping at the Devil's Staircase, and we did it every year as a little, spook ourselves out. Brought my guitar along this time, been taking some lessons, so I decided to do a little kumbaya type action down there. And all of a sudden, while I was playing guitar, Brian got really cold. It was weird. I mean, you needed a jacket that night, but you weren't shivering, and he was shivering all over. So I grabbed a blanket and brought it over to him, put it around him, and as soon as the blanket touched his body, I heard this music, singing. It was like old gospel singing. It was really weird. So Mary and I decided to go looking around, seeing what it was, and we were walking into the forest, and the deeper we got into the woods, the louder the music got. And the minute I shined my flashlight out into the woods, the music completely stopped. Walked over to Brian, and he was instantly warm again. So I figured that gospel music made him cold or something. Never went back to the Devil's Stairs, though. Just freaked us out.
The road around the Devil's Stairs is full of sharp twists and turns, and you can't drive too quickly. One night, a stranger to the area was going too fast and missed the curve at Buffalo Creek Bridge. His car spun out and crashed, killing the driver. There have been numerous fatal accidents on that stretch of road.
I was on my way home from work, and as I turned onto Palmer Drive, I saw this man walk slowly out of the woods. He came up to my car and slammed his hands down on my hood. And the next instant, he was gone. And then I looked in my rearview mirror, and he was in my back seat. I turned around quickly, but he was gone.
My name is David Gurney. I'm with Haunted North Carolina, a nonprofit scientific research organization dedicated to investigating paranormal activities. These are fellow teammates Noel McCreath and Michael McCreath, Warrensville, North Carolina, at the site of the Devil's Staircase. Now recording. Tell us your name. Where are you from? Why are you still here? Give us some sort of sign if you're here. Okay, we just had something interesting happen. The microphone that I'm using suddenly stopped working for some reason. It's, you know, a lot of times whenever we go into a paranormal location or location where paranormal activity has been reported, we will get, you know, strange equipment failures. These entities need energy to manifest in some way, whether either visually or audibly. And so what they do is they, you know, supposedly the way the hypothesis goes is that they draw energy out of, you know, their surroundings.
The impression I get here is just of an African-American Indian male, probably in his 20s to late 20s. It's either warm weather or he's been working very hard. His shirt is open. This is what I'm getting intuitively, but it wasn't like it was the happiest or easiest job or way to make money. I'm not sure if he's interactive or residual because I just get an impression of him.
When the rocks fissured when they were blasting, it created sort of an interesting geological phenomenon. Unfortunately, during that blasting, a gentleman was killed. Since then, there have been reports of people would be driving down the road. They'd see someone walking along the road. The driver would stop, let him in. They'd continue down the road, and then all of a sudden, the guy would vanish from the back seat of their car.
So, it was a perfect night. Crisp, clear, the sky was clear, you could see the moon, and I decided that I was going to go take a walk. It was beautiful outside. It was a little cold, but I could bear it. Part of the way across the bridge, I thought I heard a baby start to cry. It sounded like it was coming off the bridge, and I just kind of looked over the side to see if there was anything down there. I suddenly felt like somebody was watching me. I kind of turned to where I felt like somebody was looking at me, and there was a woman there. So I started to back away a little bit, and she started to follow me. I turned around, and she was gone. The most scary thing I've ever been through.
This specter, who pursues people, seen near the bridge at the Devil's Stairs, is said to be the ghost of a young woman who had a baby out of wedlock. The unknown woman, apparently in utter despair, threw her baby off the bridge into the water below. She was never seen alive again. People said she committed suicide.
What I'm getting is and I don't know the correct term for it at that time, but the crew chief of this guy was this crew was a very determined guy, a very hard guy. I can feel his determination in gonna make a hole in this rock. They encountered difficulties, yes, with this. Does anyone know that it seemed like a job they weren't gonna get done easily?
This recorder was completely empty when I started recording, and this particular model can record for 27 hours worth of audio, and we've only been out here for a couple of hours, and it suddenly registered as full. Some interesting things happened. had a couple instances of equipment failure, one with the mic that I was using while I was asking questions during recording, hopefully recording EVPs. That's something that is certainly, that has happened in the past. Also, Noel was able to get the impression of a African-American male. She was not aware of the history of the site, and she got the impression of an African-American male who was working here, and unfortunately was killed. And through historical evidence, it was noted that the person who was killed during the dynamiting was an African-American male. So that provides corroboration, and that's exactly what we look for.
A blasting accident kills a worker. Did the man-made destruction release an evil so profound that it roused the devil? Are the tales of ghostly passengers and demons seen in the rearview mirror merely superstition? If you asked the locals, they'd all say, evil lurks at the devil's stairs. Wilmington, North Carolina is a port town whose history dates back to the 1700s. And like most ports, it has a rowdy history that has left its mark on the city to this day. Of all the haunted locations, the most troubling is the place where the city's first gallows stood.
Sitting here in the Price Gauze House, otherwise known as the Hanging House. This house was built over a hanging ground. They did all the public hangings in Wilmington from 1800 to 1855 on the lot where this house stands now. So when Dr. William Price built this house, a lot of these unfortunate individuals that had hit the end of a rope and were buried, and now they're in here haunting this place.
Approximately a year ago, my wife and I had heard about the Wilmington ghost tours. And my being very skeptical of these type things and not really a believer, but she insisted that we go. And we walked up to about the middle of town, and he was describing this old house that was supposed to have been a place where they hung criminals in the 1800s.
This was a hanging ground. Dr. William Price, a very practical and moneyed man, built a house on a hanging ground. He thought, just because a couple of hundred people got hanged there, that won't affect my home, that won't affect my family life.
Kept talking about the house being that these spirits from these criminals had been hung, had entered the house, and I wasn't sure, but more he talked, the more he sounded believable, and I'm still not, I'm very skeptical of those type things, but when he walked away, I looked up at the second story window, and something or someone had written help. At that particular time, I called the guy back and says, there's something up there, someone has written help on the window.
Yeah, someone or something. And I looked up and I saw it, and I said, they're gonna have to get help from somebody else. And I went on my merry way. And they were sort of insistent that we help whoever or whatever it was. And I told them, I said, you go up there and help them, and you're gonna be writing help in the window. I said, you better come on. And they came with me.
At that particular time, I became a believer. There is such things because I was not hallucinating or anything. I saw it, and I really don't know how to explain it, but it was there.
The gallows of Wilmington, North Carolina took the lives of hundreds. The house now standing on the property is an architectural firm by day, and at night, no one has been able to stay there. In fact, people regularly experience ghostly phenomena simply stepping off the sidewalk and onto the grounds.
There's actually a secret that goes along with this property. You see, many of the men, women, and children who were hung here at this gallows came from other ports of call. And with no one to claim their bodies or pay for burial expense, they simply dug trenches all around here and buried them for free. And then in 1860, just a few years after they moved the gallows a few blocks east of here, away from the ever-encroaching downtown, Dr. William Price, against the advice of his friends, built his family home here. Now, one summer, the Prices had a niece in to visit them. She raced upstairs to her bedroom, and in the room was an old vanity with a beautiful mirror which she was enthralled with. And she sat in front of that mirror and she went about brushing her hair. While she was brushing her hair, she started to feel fingers running through the back of her hair. She turned to find no one in the room. When she turned back to the mirror, there was a gauzy image of a man, a young man, standing in that mirror. Other times, the family would be upstairs sleeping late in the evening, and they would hear sounds coming from the downstairs. Sometimes they'd hear voices, other times they'd hear furnishings as they were being dragged about the lower floors. They had many different experiences with these sounds, and they also included scratching noises that would periodically be heard coming from inside of the walls. In 1996, Hurricane Fran ripped through this area. The hurricane did extensive damage. It closed off most of our beaches here. And an architect that worked here, BMS Architects, lived at Carolina Beach. So the people here at the architectural firm said that he could sleep on the second floor. They already had electricity here. So he set up his bed up on the second floor in one of the offices. One night, he was startled awake by sounds coming from the lower floor. What he heard was furnishings as they were being dragged back and forth. Now this alarmed him, but the sounds grew and grew and grew to a point where he could take it no longer. Finally forced himself out of the house, racing down the stairs, out the back door, got in his car, and he drove to Walmart. He slept in the Walmart parking lot, returning the next morning at 8 a.m. Of course, he returned wearing his pajamas because that's the way he ran out of the house.
This hanging house is getting a national reputation as a haunted house. And scientific groups have been in touch about it, and paranormal societies. They all want to know about this one house. Well, I had a medium on my tour one night, but he just wanted to go back and see it on his own. So I took him back to the house. It was just the two of us. Then we're walking back around the side of the house. It's absolutely freezing back there. He's going, "Coal pockets." He goes, "Is that always there?" He's pointing up at one of the windows. I looked, and I saw this old lantern burning in the room, same window where they wrote help on a prior occasion, flickering away. That is the first time I've seen. Looks like an old lantern, doesn't it? We stood and watched that thing for 10 minutes. Both of us, like jaws, just slack dropped down. We're like, this is great. Put a shiver up my spine. I'll never forget it. So eerie looking.
One evening, I was in the home alone. I was helping out with a fundraiser. And while I was here, I was carrying a box into the front parlor. And as I was bringing the box in, I had a breath of pipe tobacco blown into my face. I had heard about the pipe tobacco odor experiences, but I never had it happen myself. I wasn't sure exactly what to do. I walked around the room, sniffing the air, trying to figure out where the odor exactly was coming from. And that's when I stumbled across the rocking chair. It was rocking back and forth a good 4 inches, and there was no one in the chair. So rightfully, I panicked, and I ran out of the house. And these odors, which still persist to this day, may appear to be strange. However, they were the same last request of many of those who perished here. One evening, my wife and I were here for an event at this home. And while we were here, she took a stroll to the back of the house with a friend. While they were back there, they noticed a shadowy figure through the windows. Now, they panicked and they came racing to me, and I came to the back of the home to investigate.
Where?
But I couldn't find any shadowy figure there. Later on, I came into the home and I searched the whole area, and there was no one in here. The shadowy figure has been seen in this home. There have been images of an old man's face that have been seen in windows. Certainly the shadowy figure, a figure in black, and that seems to run from the back of the house to the side of the house. A few years ago, a couple of reporters received permission to spend the night in this home to do a story on the unusual occurrences here. While they were here, they set up a recorder in the front parlor. Later that evening, they decided to go out and take a cigarette break, so they put the recorder on record. They went outside and returned 20 minutes later. When they rewound the tape and put it on play, partway into it, they heard a male voice grunt and then say, "Help me."
Help me.
What is that?
I didn't hear anything.
You don't hear
Help
it?
me.
Oh, I heard it that time.
You did that.
Help me.
No, we went out to smoke.
This is quite startling, but no more startling when they heard another voice from directly behind them say the exact same thing. The two panicked, turned around, found no one there.
Did you hear that?
However, a moment later, the solid oak conference table in that room began to pound up and down on the floor. The two reporters flew out of that room.
You gotta get out of here.
Help me.
People often ask where they can go to experience ghosts in Wilmington. And of course, the prime location we feel is the Old Gallow Hill home, BMS Architects. It is the most actively haunted home in Wilmington. We experience things here weekly on our tours, and it hasn't stopped in 7 years now.
Totally paranormal scene that really worked well for my tour, and I appreciate the spirits cooperating in that manner.
Can you actually bring ghosts into your house? It's long been believed that some ghosts are attached to furniture. But what happens when the artifact you bring home is from a cemetery? Roxanne Wentworth of Wappingers Falls, New York, brought home a beautiful pair of iron gates that were being discarded by her local cemetery and discovered a terrifying secret.
It was very strange how we came to get the cemetery gates, because we were putting flowers on the grave for an anniversary of someone before their family arrived. And we wanted the flowers there. And we went to the back of the cemetery and around that way to get to the gravesite. And there were these big old iron gates I hadn't seen in maybe 20, 30 years. So I left a note on the maintenance shed for someone to please call me in regard to the gates. It started snowing really hard, but 2 hours later on that Sunday morning, I had a phone call, "Come and get the gates, they're yours."
We're now standing at the actual site of the cemetery gates, which are in front of the driveway. When I'm standing in this direction, I'm getting 0.1, 0.2, but if I just turn 90 degrees, I'm up to 1.7, which is one of the highest, 1.8, one of the highest readings we've gotten tonight, 1.9, 2, 2.1. So here I am almost directly between the gates, and there seems to be an energy pattern going between the gates up the driveway. The farther I move in towards the driveway past the gates, 1.4, 1.3, 0.1. So you can see I'm just beyond the level of the gates now, about 0.8, and I know the farther I move up the driveway, the lower the readings will be. So for some reason, there is a strong measurable electromagnetic field between these gates, like an energy field moving in towards the property.
The gates were delivered right outside my front door. I had a handyman bring them, and he just put them right in the yard outside the front door until I could hire someone to install them. That night, when I was upstairs, I heard somebody coming up my stairs. It was very, very loud squeaking on my stairways, and I thought I had a burglar. I was convinced. My bedroom door was shut and the night light was on, but I was so terror-stricken, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I couldn't scream, I couldn't do anything. I just knew that when that door opened, something really bad was going to happen. After the noise stopped, going up the stairs, nothing happened. The door didn't open, I didn't hear any more feet, nothing. But within maybe 30 seconds, now something had me by the back of the hair and was dragging me backwards off the bed. I couldn't speak, but in my mind, I was yelling, "Let go, let go, let go," and it wouldn't. So I forced my head to turn, and when I eliminated space between his hand and the bed pillow, it couldn't exist anymore, and it went away. There was nothing in the room, and the door was still shut.
A terrifying midnight encounter with an invisible assailant. Roxanne Wentworth is a woman who's not easily frightened. She's a correctional officer. She knows how to take care of herself. But on this night, she brought something onto her property and seemingly opened a door to a different world.
From the Waverly Rural Cemetery delivered a few years ago, and that night she had told us that she was grabbed by the hair and dragged across the bed by somebody that she couldn't see. And I knew from what she said she wouldn't be able to stay here at night anymore, so I ended up spending the nights with her.
I'm not going to remove the gates. I've been asked why I don't do that. A lot of people think that if I remove the gates, I remove the problem. But no one's been able to validate that for me or prove to me that that would eliminate the problem, that the pathway wouldn't still remain. And that if the pathway did still remain, if I might experience some angry spirits because I had the gates removed. So I honor the gates.
I think bringing the portal between the living and the dead to your front yard is an invitation to these spirits. And obviously, as the activity began that very night, it has become an opening to the spirit world.
At one time, we had some investigators come in the beginning when these kind of things were happening. And we noticed that they were using simple handheld tape recorders, speaking to whatever spirits were out there. And then when they would play them back later, there would be voice in between our voice. And so we went out and got handheld tape recorders and started recording ourselves.
I'd go out there with a handheld audio recorder, and I'd ask them, what's your name? And I'd talk to them like I'd be talking to anyone who would be sitting down talking to next to me. And when I'd come inside, I'd rewind the tape and I'd play it back, and you'd be able to hear their voice.
EVPs are electronic voice phenomena, where tape recordings are played back to see if there are any sounds that the human ear did not pick up. Sometimes they are put through computers and enhanced. Other times, if you're lucky, you get clear voices and sounds just on the tape, unenhanced.
In this particular voice, I believe to be a woman saying, "We're women." I also got a little child saying, "I came out of the coffin."
We seem to notice an awful lot of activity around a mulberry tree that we have in the backyard. When we use our recorders and hold them up in the air, we get a lot of children up in that tree that are answering us or making comments, like they're looking up at us or they're giving us their names. Dennis, for instance. We also have gotten ectoplasm, which is what we believe to be the spirit pulling its energy together and then coming out of that orb into kind of what we call a sloppy Casper. Very active tree.
What I'm doing is recording on an audio cassette tape, standard audio cassette tape, to try to get voice of people from beyond. And I'm using a digital camera from time to time to click pictures to see if there's anyone in the yard with us.
Just a bit of a spike right here. Lori, do you want to take a picture over here? I just got a spike. The EMF meter measures electromagnetic fields, and for whatever reason, when apparitions are around, you get measurable electromagnetic fields, and this meter is sensitive enough to pick those fields up. So what I try to do is walk slowly back and forth across the grounds and see if we do get any spikes, and we just had 1 or 2 little spikes. Generally, if there's a spirit in a locked location, you will get consistent readings for that spot, but this just goes to prove how things move around this area, because I'm getting readings in many different locations coming and going.
I have an orb towards the back.
But 45 right over here, 44, so behind me, because now there's a 10-degree difference from about 10 feet to my left to right in front of me. We're at 45. This direction we're reading 56 degrees, about 10 feet away to my left. But when I just move a few feet over this, 44, 45 degrees. So a 10-degree difference over the span of about 12 feet is rather impressive. Whoa, 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 whoa. We just went up, we just had a big spike right, wow, getting a little chill here. I'm just covered in goosebumps right now. The meter went way up. It went to about 1.2, and the reading should be 0 or 0.1 when we're in an open area such as this. So that was a significant hit. And it was one of those spots when you hit, it kind of goes through you, the cold goes through you, and 1.2 again, and I didn't even move the meter. So there's something going on right here.
We had an incident upstairs in the other bedroom where my daughter went up to get something, and she noticed from her bedroom doorway their closet door was wide open and that the light was on inside. We never leave that closet open because we have a cat. So Lori went over to her bedside stand and she picked up the tape recorder, which had just become routine for us. Took that over to the closet door and noticed that the suitcase had been placed in the doorway. She turned her recorder on and she explained to anyone that might be listening that she had seen the door open, the light on, and the suitcase in the middle, and was anybody there? Then she paused to give them a chance to respond, and then she told them that they had to please go outside now.
Thank you.
When she played the recording back, after she said, "Is there anyone here?" 2 children answered. One said yes, and one said no.
The recording here a few years back, I was at the mulberry tree in the backyard where we've had some activity. And I asked, "Are you well today, Robert?" Because that's one of the names that we had gotten on the property as being one of the people that's here. And I got the response, "Mrs. Anderson?" The strange thing about that particular voice is when they said Mrs. Anderson and I listened to it on tape, I realized that my mom's last married name was Anderson.
We're in the garage now where I personally have gotten probably the most activity in my investigations at least. First time we were asking for something to make its presence known, and the meter alarm went off, the EMF meter, and we also heard the sounds, something moving around on the walls around us. We're asking that anything that is here give us some sign of your presence. What was that? We see what was over here? Something just dropped. This?
What is it?
Rope? Do you know where this was?
No, but it would have been, up on this shelf is where it would have been. There's no way to hang it over the area where it happened.
All right, so I have the meter set up and I'm just going to see if there's any activity, and I'm also filming in night vision. And we'll see if we get anything. All right, see it's moving slightly. Okay, so it's a much more sensitive meter and it is picking up something. You can hear the sound is increasing, the needle's moving a little more, so there's definitely something right in this area. Can you make a noise like you made last time? Is somebody moving behind the garage here? When we were moving around, did somebody touch my right shoulder? I felt a distinct tap on my right shoulder. I turned around to look to see who was touching my shoulder. It was just one tap on the right shoulder. Getting that crawling skin feeling again. The meter spiked a little. Yeah, the tap on the shoulder definitely got my attention. I'm kind of I'm at full alert here now.
Is anybody sensing or getting a feeling about anything?
The camera just went out. My camera just went dead again. This is the second time tonight. I had a fresh battery in it before and it went out. Okay, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, just as I'm looking at my dead camera, the meter had spiked up to 1.8 and now it's back down to 2, 0.1. So something's happening in this spot.
That was not me.
Was this down here before?
Two big orbs.
No, it was not.
Where was this?
Probably on the shelf.
Well, that's an interesting sign.
Yes, it sure is.
We asked for something to be moved, so you think this is what fell onto the... Can you make the meter make a sound again?
There's a big orb on the ceiling over by Linda. Linda, you getting any readings over there?
Yeah. Just dropped 6 degrees and then went back up again. Whatever is going on is happening in this few feet here.
I myself didn't really believe in this kind of thing before I started experiencing it for myself, but now that I've actually lived it for a few years, you know, there's no question in my mind that things happen around here. We hear banging on pipes in the basement and, you know, people walking around in a room that neither my mom nor I are in at that time. You know, I go out there and I take pictures and I can capture them on digital camera. And I can, you know, the more I see, the more I know that there's other folks here with us. So I talk to them and I communicate with them and let them know that, you know, we remember them and, you know, we appreciate them being here.
We're hoping that the gates don't just create a way to enter. We're hoping that they might also create an exit.
It could be said that the gates that open onto a cemetery are a metaphorical door between the living and the dead. But have the gates at Roxanne Wentworth's house, gates that stood for almost a century at the local cemetery, become a literal portal for the restless spirits to move between their world and ours? Roxanne and her daughter Lori believe that's exactly what's happening. In the meantime, the haunting continues, and for now, the gates still stand. The deserted hulk of what was once the Waverly Hills Sanitarium in Louisville, Kentucky, stands like a decayed fortress, stripped of its powers to heal the sick. Its ruins are a magnet for would-be ghost hunters who hope to catch a glimpse of the spirits believed to be lingering there.
I've heard a lot of rumors about Waverly since I was in 10th grade. So my girlfriends and I, we had to go check it out. The place itself looks something out of a horror movie. We decided to go in, and we walked up and down the hallways and looked through some rooms.
The building is a maze of rooms and hallways, spreading over several acres, ravaged by time and vandals. But evidence of its former use still exists. The scratch marks on the basement walls suggest it was a place of confinement.
On one of the floors, one of the rooms, there looked like something like bloodstains. What? And then we heard like someone was walking up around the floor upstairs. We need to go, guys. We tried to find a way out, but the door we went into another hallway. We kept walking and looking for another way out, and it seemed like someone was following us. We heard footsteps. We turned around, and there was definitely no one there.
I don't like this. I need to go. Come here, guys. Gotta go. Gotta go.
We looked around and searched harder and finally found a way out. When we got outside, I decided to take a picture just to prove we were there and show all of our friends.
Take a picture, okay?
I first saw her through the lens of my camera. She was standing on the 3rd floor, 10 years old, a little girl standing on the 3rd floor staring directly at us. I pointed her out to my friend. We looked at each other, amazed. What was a little girl doing out here? We knew something was definitely wrong with this picture, and so we took off.
The ghostly girl in the window has been seen by many people over the decades, but nobody knows who she was. Was she the child of a staff member or of a TB patient? Or was she, herself, a patient who perished here?
In 1910, the Waverly Hills Hospital, a wooden 2-story building with 40 beds, opened on one of the highest hills in South Jefferson County. It was built to contain the ravaging disease of tuberculosis. At that time, Louisville, Kentucky had the highest tuberculosis death rate in the country, probably due to the fact that the town was built on low-lying swampland where the TB bacteria could breed easily.
This is the second visit here by paranormal investigators Keith Age and his team from Louisville Ghost Hunting Society. They go directly to the 5th floor, where, on their first trip, they had sensed great anguish and suffering.
Room 502 is probably the most notorious room in Waverly. It's supposed to have been held for satanic rites. Also, what we do know is one of the head nurses here did hang herself in this room for different reasons. Another one supposedly jumped off the balcony from the other side. Now, why they did this, we don't know. Now, what we have had happen to us the first time we came in here in 2001, we walked into this room and we walked into basically a hot spot. It went from 86 degrees to 96 degrees within about 3 seconds. We had to get out because it was getting hotter and hotter. This is one of the rooms where we've had actually an EMF meter basically disintegrate in our hands. We sent it back to the manufacturer, and he's like, whatever you got, you just walked into so much power, he just couldn't handle it. You guys ready?
Tonight they will see if they can isolate and identify the ghostly activity reported here.
What do we got back there? When we first walked in, my EMF meter with a brand new meter battery decided just to quit. And as we're in here, it decided to start working again. So we're having a few malfunctions, which usually is inducive to paranormal activity. So we're gonna see if we can get any more as we go around the building. Where are you headed? We're heading down to the 4th floor, where we've had a lot of interesting things that have happened. Hopefully we'll catch
Paranormal investigators from Louisville Ghost Hunting Society have come to the Waverly Hills Sanitarium to record the spirit presence of the many people who suffered and died here.
You look down there in the screen, you can see them all moving around. See them? See them all there in the corner? There's a whole bunch of them moving around right over there.
What do those represent?
It's just that manifestation of the energy. It's the way they manifest their energy. You can see quite a few moving down here right now. So we've got some activity right down this hall.
This is the place where every kid in Louisville, Kentucky comes to be scared or take your girlfriend or whatever, and everybody claims to have been broken into Waverly. The first year we were up here, we heard just blood-curdling screams and pounding coming from this floor. The guards and the owners and what Louisville ghost hunters were here, we all ran up, and there were these 3 teenage boys right here, standing here. We got here, we noticed one of them had an axe. What was really cool was, they're going, we couldn't get out, it wouldn't leave us alone. No matter where we turned, it wouldn't leave us. Now, at that point, that's when we looked at the door. Now, this is a big solid steel door. And if you look right here, they were pounding on this door with his axe. Only problem was, there's no lock holding this door. If they'd have hit it, the door would have swung, and it wouldn't have given you these clean cuts. If it had been leaned up against the wall, it would have bounced and still wouldn't have given you the clean cuts. So whatever it was that these boys were scared of, it was enough to where this door would not budge, it wouldn't let them out, and they couldn't get out, and they were terrified, petrified. They could not leave. They just said it was big and black and kept moving all around.
Mentally unstable TB patients were housed on the 5th floor of the Waverly Hills Hospital. Nurses here worked grueling 18-hour shifts with the sickest, most piteous patients. It was the wrong place for 2 thrill-seeking adventurers to hang around.
Having fun.
Me and a friend of mine were just going and wanting to hang out and see if we could get any action around this old place. And we ended up going up to the 5th floor, and we were just basically hanging out and chatting and talking, you know, nothing out of the ordinary. And we started hearing all these weird sounds, and the building started to get a little bit cooler. And coldness just kind of kept slipping in, and the wind was blowing through the walls, and we were both getting kind of jumpy, so we decided it was time to leave. Suddenly we heard this loud sound. It was like the sound of a chair being slammed to the ground. It was so loud, it seemed like it was in the same room with us. We were the only 2 in there. And we just sat and we listened, but we didn't hear anything else.
Get out.
And then suddenly, the next thing we heard, it was definitely directed toward us. It wasn't just some arbitrary sound. This was the sound of like a voice that was restricted, just gasping out, get out,
okay,
get out.
This isn't cool, let's go.
And after we heard that, we didn't want to hear anything else. So I started running, and I got out the door first. But my friend, the door slammed shut on his ankle, and he got caught, and he couldn't get away. And I was just so scared, I just kept running. And I had to leave him behind, and he eventually got loose, and he was just hobbling, trying to catch up with me. We were just scared to death.
2 events dating back to the Sanitarium days make room 502 a particular hotspot for ghost activity. Both are bitter remnants of the building's tragic past. In 1928, the head nurse was found in room 502, hanging from a light fixture, a chair kicked to the floor as she took her last breath. Then, in 1932, Another nurse who worked there jumped tragically to her death from the balcony that leads from room 502. 2 women dead by their own hand, both dedicated to healing the sick and insane in room 502. Perhaps it was too much misery to witness, yet it seems they are forever doomed to stalk the place where they worked and died.
This is also the area when we give tours, this is where we stop and people do actually can see these things in the hallway. This is where I actually got hit with a piece of cement during one of these tours. I was showing a young lady, she couldn't actually see this stuff, so I was trying to help her. And what you do is just basically drop your eyes and let your eyes just go out of focus and see everything at once. And as we're standing here talking, this just hunk of cement came flying through and just basically smacked me in the head. I got 6 stitches out of it.
But while you guys were standing there talking, there were a bunch of them swirling right behind where Keith was standing. So whatever it is, it's generally following us around. It'd stay ahead of us down this hallway. And then when you guys started walking back, it started following you back down this way.
And what you do is basically drop your eyes and let your eyes just go out of focus and see everything.
We had a small figure, almost a childlike figure, standing in the doorway.
The temperature dropped down, was dropping drastically until we turned on all the lights. And as soon as we turned on all the lights, temperature shot back up to ambient temperature. What we saw when we were talking about the small image was actually against this door. And when we catch the shadows, a lot of times they're catching through this windlass room here. My phone is turned off. Trust me. I'll turn it off a 3rd time. And that's things that happen up here. Things that happen with phones up here, if they go off in here, you answer them, a lot of times they will melt. They'll just burn up. My phone's been turned off since we entered the building. And as y'all heard, it just went off a minute ago. I turned it off again in the hallway, and it just rang again. So now it's off for the 3rd time. So that's just part of this building, and it just got cold in here, Mark, didn't it?
Yeah. I feel the cold.
We dared each other to go in there. The first person to get scared and leave loses. We went up through the woods and we walked through the main entrance and up and down the hallways.
A few months after their first visit, Beth Ann Hendricks and her friends came back to Waverly Hills to test their courage once more. The trip started out as a bit of a lark, but as they made their way through the vast labyrinth of gaping hallways, things got more and more weird. The girls sensed they were being followed by an unseen presence.
Then we heard this clicking sound and a sound of metal scraping against the floor or the wall, I'm not sure which one. And then we saw her. When I saw her, she was dressed in white and scrambling around on the floor. Her wrists were bleeding. At that point, I knew it couldn't be real.
Yeah, we're down to 42 degrees right now, right here.
God.
Right here in front of me.
It's freezing in here.
This is the room where we first got the most violent activity that we ever caught. As we were giving a tour in here one night, it was about 20 people in here. My back was to the wall and I was facing this way. And then from the side over here, I got hit with a Mountain Dew bottle. So I'm thinking someone in here is just messing with me, you know, part of the tour. And as I'm looking over there, what was left of the fluorescent light fixture, which is these wires are actually a part of, that was here, decided to swing down and just basically rang my bell. Just hit me full force in the face. And as I'm standing here, I'm hearing people go, wow, cool, check it out. I'm hearing concrete sounds. And what it is the concrete off the floor is now sliding this way and hitting me in the wall over there. And before that section of the wall fell down, you could actually see where it hit the concrete so hard it took chunks out of the concrete. And of course, everybody here's going, wow, cool. And I'm going, let's get out of here. You know, this hurts. And this was a hydro treatment room.
The batteries in here are fairly fresh and they just died, which is fairly common. One thing you do in ghost hunting, bring lots of batteries.
I would not stand in front of the door. I'd come all the way in. The door's level. What tends to happen in this room is this door will shut on its own.
I'm freezing.
I know it's dropping on me too.
Yeah, I'm real cold.
46. Well, again, this is conclusive with paranormal activity. I mean, we know it's an actual 52 degrees outside, and I can actually see my breath now in front of me.
In this room, they did several different operations or procedures. One was called an autopneumothorax, and what they would do is they would go in and manually collapse a lung. They would make an incision between a couple ribs, stick in a tube, and collapse a lung. What they believed was that if they gave the lung time to rest.
Again, we were just standing here talking, and as Renee was explaining what went on in this room, the door decided to shut on its own. I didn't see it. I had my back to it. I heard it. We all turned around.
I had my back to it, and there was no rush of air. There was no draft or anything.
Temperature also.
Yeah, the temperature was actually dropping at that point. When we hit it, it was like 44 degrees. And again, right now we're at 51, 50. So, you know, it's naturally going down, but it shouldn't have dropped that far down.
Well, the last time I was here, we definitely had a sense of being followed and watched everywhere we went. We saw a figure darting between the doors and looking around corners and peering through the windows. We were investigating in the operating room. I hadn't noticed anything there, so I went out into the hallway when I became aware of two men who apparently had been following us from room to room and floor to floor. One of them was the lab coat man, which I'd heard about, and another was another man who apparently had joined them as we came up the stairwell. Later on, I went downstairs and I was taking some time-lapse photos on the walkway out here by myself. While I was taking the photos, I heard a sound directly behind me that sounded like if someone had stepped on some broken plaster. And I turned around, and standing directly behind me was the lab coat man with his hands in his pockets and just watching me. The event scared the crap out of me, and because I was not prepared for that.
Silver Run in Ritchie County, West Virginia. Looks like a ghost town today, but a century ago, it was a busy railway town. And believe it or not, a town with a ghost even then. Folks around here believe that this tunnel is haunted by a phantom traveler, still lingering from those days. These paranormal investigators have been here before. They felt an overwhelming presence of somebody who tried to scare them away.
My friend Tom Moore and I had decided to go do a little impromptu investigation of Silver Run Tunnel to investigate the hauntings there. Just do a little exploring, just the two of us. It was a warm night, but as we got closer to it, the air began to get really cold. And we were snapping some pictures, and when the light would flash and light up the tunnel, you could see.
It was a very unusual night for us. The tunnel got icy cold real quick, and as we were taking photos, this lady who had long dark hair and a white gown on, she began appearing to us.
And when I would snap my camera, the flash would illuminate the tunnel, and I saw the ghost.
And she began screaming to us as if she didn't want us inside the tunnel. And at that time, Crystal had backed up into the wall, and I had noticed that, and I took hold of Crystal, and at that time I felt that we should actually move on and to leave the tunnel.
I looked over to Tom because he'd reached out and grabbed me, and he saw her too. And that was amazing to know that, you know, this was really happening. This was going on to someone besides just me, that what I was seeing was real. And it was terrifying. We decided we had to leave. We couldn't stay and investigate it, just the two of us. Right now, we'll have to go back with my investigative unit at some point in the future when I gather my courage a little bit.
The weeds have taken over the once thriving town of Silver Run, and the rail corridor that shuttle trains between Grafton and Parkersburg has been turned into recreational trails. But long ago, something happened here that none of the old-timers around here will ever forget. They'd seen the ghost of a black-haired beauty, and they've been seeing her ever since.
It was late in August, under a harvest moon. The engineer on B&O's night train was drinking coffee to stay alert. He had done the run 100 times before. Just as he rounded the bend into the Silver Run tunnel, tunnel number 19, he saw a woman dead ahead, standing on the tracks. He blasted the whistle, but she was frozen to the spot. Frantically, the engineer applied the brakes. A second before impact, she flew up and disappeared into the foggy night. The engineer feared the worst. He imagined the horror of finding her body, ravaged by the train, her white skin spattered with blood. He searched everywhere, but there was no sign of a body. Had it been just an apparition? When he pulled into the 6th Street station in Parkersburg, the engineer raced to report what happened.
You wouldn't believe what I just saw. This girl, she stepped right in front of the cab. I swear to God, I killed her. And I didn't find her body anywhere.
It's all right. I've been getting reports about this all night. I believe you.
You believe me? But I didn't kill her? She's not dead?
My grandmother told me, as the story goes, there was a young woman riding the train into Parkersburg to meet her betrothed.
The people of Parkersburg claim that this young woman, whose name is unknown, was riding the train to meet and marry her fiancé. She was a small-town girl and was nervous about traveling this long distance. But she may have had another suitor, a very jealous one, who did not look kindly upon her intended marriage. The conductor eased the young woman's fears and helped settle her on the train, not realizing this would be the last time he'd see her.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy your ride with us.
The woman's proudest possession was a necklace given to her by her betrothed. It would be crucial to discovering what happened to her.
Now many say that young lady was murdered.
That night, as the train made its way through the dark, the jealous suitor, it is theorized, took his revenge for being rejected by the woman he loved. Later, when the conductor returned, he told the police there was no sign of the girl. All that remained was her luggage and her diary, which she had been writing in up to the moment of her disappearance.
Others say She simply jumped off the train. For whatever reason, she vanished, and many believe her to be that ghost of Silver Run.